if Europe was interested in peace, what would they be doing differently?
Well, of course, they would very much support the basic arrangements that were agreed in Alaska, but still they can't leave behind this Russophobic mode that they entered in several years ago, and I think they started to do it before the start of our special military operation in 2022. There were a lot of loud statements, and you know that the current composition of those who define European foreign policy is very much Russophobic, and they were going towards this aim for many years. So now they have what they wanted. I think that Europeans should press President Zelensky to think about his country and not his own skin, because now what President Zelensky is thinking about is saving his own skin and saving the skin of his henchmen, members of the family, etc. He doesn't care about Ukrainians, because it is absolutely undisputable fact that majority of Ukrainians do not fight anymore. They don't want to fight. They already understood that what is happening is not beneficial for Ukraine, because Ukraine is merely used as a pawn in Western geopolitical interests, in the way that it was a kind of a Western project, anti-Russia, which started in Ukraine at least in 2014 and maybe even earlier than that. So Zelensky pushes his country fellow men to fight. People are being chased in the streets. People are being taken against their own will to the front line. And well, this is of course a tragedy, but this tragedy can be avoided, easily avoided, because Russia from the outset proposed peaceful means to solve this crisis. You remember back in 2022, we were within a hand's reach of an agreement. It was already initialed, but then because of intervention from Mr. Boris Johnson and the others, they convinced Zelensky to fight with Russian arms. So I think that Europe should be favoring the scenario where Ukrainians are not being used as cannon fodder in absolutely futile war against Russia. But that's not what they want, because Ukraine was always a tool for them, and they want to use Ukraine for maximum. Maybe not to inflict strategic defeat to Russia. They understand that it's an attainable goal right now, but to weaken Russia. To make Russia bleed as much as possible. That's their aim right now. It's not a strategy. It's kind of emotional, I would say, meltdown that is happening right now in European countries, and they want Ukraine to fight. And here they are on the same page with Zelensky, because Zelensky wants Ukraine to fight because he understands that the moment the hostilities are over, he has to conduct elections, and he has no chances for these elections. So here their goal coincides. And also one more thing I think that Europeans should uphold in Ukraine and very much support is the, for example, the treatment of Russian-speaking population and Russian minorities in Ukraine, not only Russian but Hungarian as well. Because what's happening in Ukraine is absolutely incompatible with the basic notion of human rights, the basic European values, and they just try to put a blind eye to what is happening. And this is absolutely impossible to grasp for many who are following this situation, because they know what's happening in Ukraine. They know that Russian speakers are being prosecuted and harassed. We are receiving letter by letter from Ukrainian opposition, from Ukrainian political prisoners. They say that there are dozens of thousands of people in prison for their beliefs. What's happening with canonic Orthodox Church is absolutely out of understanding for anybody who knows basic things about human rights and about freedom of faith and belief. So Europeans should be very much interested to see Ukraine developing in the normal civilized way, which is far from the fact right now. I believe that these are the main things that Europeans should seek in the resolution of Ukrainian crisis.
Gary, I'm not going to show this video, but one of the other things that Sergei Lavrov mentioned on U.S. television yesterday apparently was referring to what Trump and Putin had at least discussed, if not come to an agreement on, in Anchorage, whereby that there would be no NATO for Ukraine. There would be some, I think as Trump put it, swapping of territory, et cetera. And Sergei Lavrov said that's like the minimum necessary for us to come to a negotiated settlement. That's what was said then. And then actually yesterday, Volodymyr Zelensky made a speech where he was talking about something besides any kind of a negotiated settlement.
I have spoken about this before, and today we also discussed Ukrainian drone production and our joint capabilities with partners. Investments now can contribute not only to physical protection on the front lines, but also to compelling Russia to end this war. Today, I asked the Prime Minister to consider allocating the remaining funds for this year under the Nansen program specifically toward drones. This would be highly impactful. The more drones we have, both for defending our positions and for long-range strikes, the greater the pressure on Russia to pursue peace.
Zelensky is wanting to pressure Russia into backing down from their terms and not taking territory, etc. Can they succeed against Russia?
No, they can't succeed for sure. And we know this song of Zelensky. He's always trying to be cool. I don't know, to be alpha man. He's an actor, so it depends on the role that is being written to him. So far, he's playing this role. I don't know who is preparing the script, possibly Europeans, and he wants to look as a tough guy. But of course, it's not reflecting of what's really happening in the battlefield on the front line. And when he is speaking about these military issues, it's very much, I would say, confirming what we predicted when people were speaking about ceasefire, because you know that initially everything started about long-term ceasefire, that let's stop the battlefield and then discuss the terms of the deal, more or less in the way it happened during the Minsk agreements, the ill-fated Minsk agreements. But immediately when the conversation on ceasefire started, Western countries, European countries, and Ukraine, as we now see President Zelensky, were speaking about beefing up Ukrainian defense capabilities, bringing more weapons to Ukraine, militarizing Ukraine. So a good question comes out of it. What is it for Russia? What do we benefit from if we agree on this kind of a ceasefire? When Ukraine, which is now having very bad times at the battlefield, which is exhausted and which has, of course, very few manpower. If Ukraine has this type of a breathing space where it can rearm, heal its wound, and equipped by new arms, what is it in there for Russia? This is a very good question. So of course it's out of question for us to agree to any such kind of a deal where Ukraine may continue to be militarized and all the things about that. Also NATO, you mentioned it at the beginning of your question. NATO is of course part of a problem, not part of a solution. It is absolutely clear about that. And it's worth recalling that back at the beginning of the 90s, when Ukraine was gaining independence and Russia acknowledged Ukrainian independence. Russia acknowledged Ukrainian independence on the basis of Declaration of Independence, which clearly stated that Ukraine will be denuclearized, neutral state, not member of any alliances. And that was the basis of our recognition. Then it all changed. Now there is a different face of Ukraine that Zelensky is trying to show. But this is the face that we don't like. And this country clearly represents a threat to Russia. We were speaking about this for many, many years, trying to make our point that Ukraine in NATO is something that would be absolutely unacceptable for Russia. And now you see that Zelensky is picking up this narrative once again after President Trump repeatedly said that it's out of question of Ukraine joining NATO. So it can't be viewed otherwise than that a provocation. This is a clear provocation and a clear attempt to undermine what was agreed and discussed in Alaska.
Now, one of the things that Zelensky said on Sunday, actually at the Independence Day ceremony that they held in Kiev, is that he was pretty much in your face to Russia and said, we haven't won yet, but we will not lose. And so he indicated that he was not looking for a negotiated settlement, but for a military victory. Now, you also mentioned Europe a second ago. I believe it was last week, again on American television, Emmanuel Macron went in and basically said, it's a myth that Russia is going to win this war. As a matter of fact, he said that Russia has only taken 1% since November of 2022. And so implying that Russia can't take any more than that. What do you say to those charges?
Well, if they claim it like this, okay, we can continue as we continue right now. And you know that we're not stopping at the battlefield. This recalls very much, recent history when all of a sudden Western countries which were claiming that Ukraine is winning, that Russia is about to collapse, that sanctions are damaging the Russian economy very much. All of a sudden they realized that there is no way Ukraine can win. Then they started to speak about, they invented another formula. They will support Ukraine as much as they can. But seeing what's happening in the battlefield, they understand that the things are very bad for Ukraine, and they also changed narrative. Now they are speaking about helping Ukraine survive, and also there are a lot of deliberations on what a victory would look like. Some people are citing Finnish example. So you see that the narrative is very much changing, and maybe the general public does not follow it, but those who really are specializing in these issues, of course, see the difference. So now the narrative is to keep Ukraine afloat. And as for the advance, I would tell you one thing, that the battlefield that we have right now is about very much fortified portions of Ukrainian territory, which had been fortified since 2014. These are fortresses, and we are taking fortress by fortress. Of course, it requires more effort than going in the open field and attacking the enemy there. So this is a very difficult part of Ukrainian defense, but I assure you that the moment we take it, and we are very much close to this scenario, regardless of what the Western countries are saying, things will go easier, and Ukrainians themselves acknowledge this. But is it in the interests of Ukraine? We doubt it very much, because each time when we proposed to Ukraine something, I think that our new offer was worse than the previous ones. Compare Istanbul 2022, where Ukraine could have gone away with losing Donetsk and Lugansk, and then now it's about 4 regions. I'm not mentioning Crimea, of course, this is a done deal already. But you see that everything what is happening is not happening in Ukraine's favor. Of course, Western countries can deny it. Of course, Western countries can strike the upbeat tone because they are interested in Ukraine inflicting as much problems to Russia as possible. They are not interested in stopping the bloodshed, unlike President Trump, who looks like very much genuinely is interested in stopping this bloodshed. So that's their strategy, and this is absolutely anti-humane strategy that they are having here in the Ukrainian issue.
Yeah, we've actually pointed that out as well on our show in the past. One of the other things that was mentioned, a pretty pointed question by the NBC host Christian Welker to Sergei Lavrov, was trying to paint Russia as the aggressor in there. And in fact, that's how the West has painted Russia from the beginning. It says that it was an unprovoked attack in 2022. And several times President Putin has been mocked actually in the West because he says, we didn't start this. And everyone says, well, of course you did. You invaded on February 24th, 2022, etc. And but here recently, just a couple of days ago, actually, Putin addressed this issue, and he again mentioned that from the Russian perspective, the war started in 2014.
If we're being honest, what projects have we actually lost in the so-called unfriendly countries? Well, by the way, we do not have unfriendly countries. We have unfriendly elites in some countries. And with the peoples of those countries, I assure you, of course, propaganda works there. They wash people's brains and talk about how we started the war, and they forget that they themselves started the war in 2014 when they began using tanks and aircraft against the peaceful population of Donbass. That is when the war started, and we are doing everything to stop it. As for our relations with the United States, they are at an extremely low level since the Second World War. I have spoken about this many times already. But with the arrival of President Trump, I think a light at the end of the tunnel has nevertheless appeared. And just now there was a very good, substantive, and frank meeting in Alaska. Contacts continue at the level of our ministries and agencies and companies. I very much hope that the first steps that were taken are only the beginning of a full-scale restoration of our relations.
So I wonder if you can kind of explain what the Russian position is, and when Putin says this started back in 2014, and Sergei Lavrov said on Sunday that the attack in 2022 came because of what the Ukraine side was doing in the Donbass area. What is the Russian position on that?
Well, I can't agree more, not only because this is my president, but because this is a very logical thing. And this is not logical only for those who try to be selectively blind, who try absolutely to claim that the history starts in February 2022. This is absolutely not true. By the way, I need to say that the rhetoric of Western countries here in the Security Council, for example, has changed, and they are no longer using this word unprovoked. Normally they now say illegal aggression, but not unprovoked, because saying unprovoked, this is ridiculous after what people know already about the origins of this crisis, about the root causes, which we think should be addressed for any sustainable settlement. So we all remember how it all started, and I was working, I'm here for 8 years, and I recall that for every year we were holding several meetings on Ukraine, calling for them, devoted to the implementation of the Minsk agreements, or to lack of implementation from Ukraine and its Western backers. And we were always warning and saying openly that there is a war ongoing in Donbass, that this war was launched by the Kiev regime against its own residents, against its own citizens, only because of the fact that they want to remain Russian. They wanted to remain citizens of Ukraine, but they wanted to speak Russian, to teach Russian to their children. They wanted to believe in the gods that they are accustomed to believe. They wanted to honor the heroes, the real heroes who liberated Ukraine from fascism, and not those who were collaborating with Hitler, killing hundreds of thousands of Jews, Poles, Russians, Ukrainians, and others. That was the only thing they wanted. We all remember, for example, what happened in Odessa in 2014, in May 2014, when 50 people were burnt alive in Odessa only because of the fact that they wanted to remain Russians, to preserve their identity. So this was the war against everything Russian that was started deliberately by the Kiev regime in 2014, and this is something that can't be ignored, that can't be taken out of equation, and it should be considered in the framework of every effort to resolve Ukrainian crisis, because this is the main root cause of what has happened, and it should be tackled, it should be addressed. I think that's what President Putin meant, and it's absolutely a unanimous position, I think, of every Russian citizen, of all Russians, because we saw it with our own eyes, and we know it not only because of news, because of some television coverage, but we know because we have relatives there, we have friends there. I myself, when I was there, I gave refuge to refugees from Donbass, and they were telling the things that they faced. All of a sudden, their peaceful life was turned into nightmare when Ukrainian aircraft and artillery attacked their peaceful residences. That's not that we invented something. This is in our DNA right now, and this issue should be taken into consideration. But of course, if some people want to remain selectively blind, it's very hard to deal with them. I hope that President Trump is now opening his eyes and is more open to the real, I would say, study of the root causes of this crisis, and he mentioned it even which is very, very important for any successful effort to.
Indeed, it is. I know you're running really short on time here, so let me do two other things really quick.
Okay.
One is Russia has said that they are willing to contemplate security guarantees as part of a negotiated settlement, but the definition seems to be very different than what the Western and Ukraine side is. What is the Russian definition of security guarantees that they're willing to contemplate?
Indeed, we think that security of Ukraine is very much related to the security of Russia. Otherwise, this crisis wouldn't have started. So I would refer to the initial understanding that was achieved in Istanbul in 2022, and I think my foreign minister referred to it, when it was Ukrainians who proposed some kind of arrangement when the permanent members of the UN Security Council, plus some other countries, would have formulated these security guarantees for Ukraine, and at that moment it was absolutely satisfactory for Ukraine. Now what they are saying is absolutely not about security guarantees. It's about NATO countries' troops being introduced into what remains of Ukraine, with the capability of arming Ukraine, of militarizing Ukraine, and in this equation there is nothing about Russian security. And we always refer also to the principle of indivisible security, which were upheld in the several decisions of OSCE summits, for example, that the security of one state shouldn't be achieved against the interests of other states. So this is very basic, I think, understanding that should be upheld, and that should be put into the basis of any security guarantees for Ukraine, for Russia, for everybody else.
And then thank you for that, for clarification. And then last question we have, going back to the Anchorage meeting, the general terms that Trump and Putin came to, if they can't be negotiated, or if they can't be agreed to, if Trump can't get the Western side to agree to the things that he was willing to agree with President Putin, the question is going to be, what's going to happen then? And on May 30th, your boss, Ambassador Nevensia, said this.
President, we've said and want to repeat that the objective of our special military operation can be achieved through peaceful or military means. Our armed forces stand ready to continue stepping up their military activities insofar as is necessary.
So he said back then that either you'll get this at the negotiating table or on the battlefield, but one way or another, Russia is going to get what they're looking for their security, as he said then. Has anything changed?
No, nothing has changed, because these are obvious things, and this is the things that Ukraine should do for the sake of Ukraine as well, to become a normal country, to become a country that is not a threat to anyone, for the sake of its citizens, something that they have forgotten already about, that their president can do something good for its own citizens. So this is absolutely clear. We were saying from day one, and this is not the only day when my boss made this statement. You may look back almost every our statement in the Security Council since 2022, and we were always saying that we would prefer diplomatic solution to any military solution, and we would be prepared to stop at any moment to address the root causes of this conflict. And it's about root causes that we are saying that we want to achieve these goals of our special military operation, and nothing on top of that. Very basic and clear thing, and I think that these are the same things that any country would expect from its peace-loving neighbor. It's not something extraordinary that Russia expects from Ukraine.
And if Ukraine or Europe will never concede to that, and what if it takes a year, 2 years? Does Russia have the capacity and willingness to keep fighting?
Well, of course, we continue a fight on the ground. It's not about ceasefire that we are speaking. So I think it's up to Ukraine and to Europe to weigh all the options that they have. But again, they should learn the lessons of history, and it shows.
Right, but I'm sorry, but the question is, can Russia keep fighting that long, or has it have the capacity?
Well, I'm not the military man. I don't have this information firsthand, but I trust my military commanders. They are doing a great job, and I absolutely think that they calculate all the risks. And from the outset, not only my boss, but President Putin, Minister Lavrov, were saying that we are ready to continue our fight if the other side is not listening to what we are saying, and if the other side prefers to see the solution on the battlefield. This is not the scenario that we prefer, but we are ready for this scenario, and nothing has changed in this regard.
I see. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Ambassador. We're very grateful for you coming on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And as always, we thank you for joining us today as well. And also, as a reminder, be sure and tell your friends who may prefer to get their information via podcast that we are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podcast Addict. Just have them type in Daniel Davis Deep Dive, and you'll find us waiting for you there. And also for your other friends who actually like the written word better, we've got that now too. DanielDavisDeepDive.substack.com, where you see lots of our written words here. And we also have some of our videos clipped on there as well. So it's kind of a two for them. But be sure and send them there so that they too get the unintimidated and uncompromised truth that you get on a regular basis here at the Daniel Davis Deep Dive. Thanks, folks, and we'll see you on the next episode of Daniel Davis Deep Dive.